going to get. But we'll bring in Joe Thomas in 1 sec after a quick reminder that FanDuel is the #1 sponsor of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. Guaranteed, that's $150, win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And let's give some love to Alante here, guys. He turned $5 into $6,600 with a 2-leg parlay, first pitch result single in 2 separate games. He had Mauricio Dubon hitting a single off Jonathan Leclerc in the 4th inning. He also had Ronald Acuna getting a single off Trevor Rogers in the 8th inning on the first pitch. They both hit, and Steve dropped the super so they could see the winnings. Yeah. But this was a $5 bet into a $6,600 payout.
Does it have to be the specific player he designates?
Yes. First pitch.
First God.
And it's Jose Leclerc, by the way, not John.
Jose Leclerc,
I guess, Bull, what you're doing in that situation is you're studying guys that like to swing at the first pitch.
The first pitch, yeah. But Dubon in particular, no, we won't go on for too long. Dubon in particular is just a dude. I mean, Acuna is an excellent hitter, so I can go. But, like, Dubon is just a random dude.
But, if you drop $5 on that every day.
Oh, why not?
You're going to hit that.
He's hit it twice in the first 4 weeks of the season.
So he's found a loophole.
Yeah. Investigation is coming soon.
Yeah, let's do it.
No, you know what they're going to do? They're going to drop that available bet.
I mean, my gosh, that's a huge win.
That's almost like stealing. If you make that $5 bet every day, you're going to come up okay at some point.
He's now covered for the whole year. Even if he loses every $5 bet the rest of the year, he's covered.
So we mentioned FanDuel being America's #1 sportsbook. Let's go international and welcome in our #1 international football coach right now, and that is Joe Thomas, our guy. What's up, Joe? How's the streets of Germany and Munich and the Ravens treating you overseas?
They're treating me well. They're treating. Oh man, sprechen kein Deutsch right now. It's not so good. Nicht so good. But we have been doing some football, and we're actually coming up. We're like 4 weeks away from our first game, which is getting exciting. But all of a sudden, the competitive juices are starting to flow, and I'm starting to get nervous again the way I used to when the Browns games would be coming right around the corner during training camp.
Joe, I remember asking you on one of your earlier visits on UCSS, because I thought, we talked about it, I think, man, you'd make an excellent coach. You'd make an excellent general manager. And I said, is that in your future? And your answer was, no, not right now. I want to wait until my kids get a little older. Did the bug just bite you again? You couldn't stay away? What happened?
Well, when we're over in Europe, our guys are still working during the day or going to school. So it's a lot less of a commitment than it would be if I were in college in America or coaching in the NFL. So I think the commitment's still a lot less. And that's why it felt like it was the right thing to do to come over here, get an opportunity to travel a little bit, give my kids a chance to live abroad, and still be able to just scratch that itch just a little bit with the coaching and being able to coach some pros that have a lot of talent, but they just don't have a lot of experience. And so I think for me as a coach, to be able to take a guy that has a lot of talent but hasn't had a lot of coaching, you see that progress really quickly. And so the payoff has been already really big for me. So it's been a great experience, but I'm not quite ready to commit, like I mentioned, until my kids are out of high school to that full-time job, which is college or NFL coaching.
Who loves beer more, Germany or Wisconsin?
Oh, Germany.
I thought nobody could compare with Wisconsin, but in Germany, it is not a culture. It is their religion over here, how they drink beer. But it's very well organized, and so I give them credit for that. Like they know very well when they're going to drink beer, and then they drink a lot of it, and then they don't for a long time. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's a festival. Time to drink beer again. It's Oktoberfest. It's Frühlingsfest. It's Stark Beer Fest. So as you would expect with the Germans, it's all very organized, but they definitely drink more beer than they do in Wisconsin, which is hard to even imagine that I'm saying that.
Yeah.
Joe, have you gotten a sense yet as to how popular football, American football, is in Germany? And do you get recognized like you would here?
Occasionally I'll get recognized by a Browns fan, but I think the NFL fandom is incredible over here. 2 years ago, I came here with the NFL Network to cover the first German NFL game between the Bucs and the Seahawks. and they had 1 million ticket requests in the first day for an 80,000 seat stadium. So the fandom is there. They just don't have the ability a lot of times to watch a lot of the games because they happen in the middle of the night, and they don't have the chance to really like dive in the way we do 24/7 with the news cycle. So I think as the game continues to grow, they're going to get more access to that. And guys like McNuggets are going to be recognized on the streets of Germany just about anywhere.
God help us.
Joe, I was a big fan of NFL Europe. I love the uniforms. I loved when I was younger watching it. Do you believe there will ever be professional teams that would be in London or Germany or somewhere? And how could they incorporate that into the game? Is that at all feasible?
I think it's going to happen. I don't know when, because there are a lot of hurdles to get over. Like you mentioned, the feasibility is a real challenge, and not just the travel. I think the travel is not as big as of an issue as people think, because these guys are flying on private chartered jets anyway, and the flight from London to New York, what is it, 4 or 5 hours? When we would fly to Seattle, it was like the same distance. Yeah. So I don't think that's the issue. Honestly, I think the biggest issue is just guys living in the UK or living in Germany or some of these other countries in Europe and dealing with the passports, dealing with trading players, bringing guys in for workouts and stuff like that. The laws over here are a little bit different. Like, I've been here for 3 months, 4 months now, and I still don't have my residency card that's official that allows me to get health insurance, just because it just takes so much more time. And so I think the NFL would have to be able to tackle how they can work internationally, because you're going to wind up in situations where guys are trying to get traded, or you're going to have guys that are trying to be signed and they don't have a passport, or they can't get them into the country for some reason, or they can't get the clearance to have the work visa. So I think that is probably an even bigger issue than just the travel. But feasibility wise, I think if they added a full division that was in Europe, and then they could combine the games where you don't have to travel to the United States except for every maybe like 3 weeks. And then when you do, you'd stay for a couple of weeks. I think that could definitely work. And I definitely think they're going to figure it out at some point. I just don't know when.
Joe, for those that don't know, explain the setup of this league. How many teams are there? Where are the players from? How many games will there be in a season? And are these teams in any way affiliated with any of the NFL teams?
Well, I'm trying to figure out some of those things myself, to be totally honest. I'm just looking at my practice script for tonight and just kind of diving into that, just like I did when I was a lineman with the Browns. I'm just kind of focused on my own little thing. But I think there's like 17 teams. There's 2 divisions. There's kind of a North division that's a lot of Germany, and then some of the countries around Germany to the north. And then we're in the South division with the Munich Ravens. So we actually play a pretty awesome schedule. I'm not going to lie. It was part of the reason I came over here. We go to Barcelona, we go to Milan, we go to Prague, we go to Austria, and then we only have 1 game in Nuremberg in Germany. And so the travel is pretty awesome. Like when we go to Barcelona, we're going for 2 days. We're going the day before, so we'll stay one night, and then we're actually spending the night after. So if you see me sunburned on the beaches of Barcelona on Monday morning after a game, you'll know exactly why. But it's pretty cool. So you just play basically everybody twice in your division, and then they pick the playoffs from there. I think there's maybe 8 teams that make the playoffs, and then you work to a championship game, which is like September 21st or somewhere around there. It's right around the start of Oktoberfest. That's how I know the date, because in my mind I'm like, hey, we win the championship, then we go to Oktoberfest and celebrate. That's a story made in Netflix heaven right there.
How does the talent of your team compare to maybe what your expectations were heading in there?
They're actually a lot more talented than I expected. I kind of expected kind of like a Division III quality football. And I think maybe when you watch the game, that's what you see, just because these guys don't have the experience. They don't have the coaching. They don't have the setup and the structure that we have in the States. Like, we start playing high school football, middle school football, and it's all through our school. So you just stick around. It's easy. Your pads are there up, and you get pretty good coaching all the way through. And then once you get to college, then it becomes your full-time job. For these guys, to your other question, my guys are working right now. It's 5:15 at night, and they're all getting off of work and getting ready to drive here because my most handsomely paid lineman makes 500 euros a month, which is like below minimum wage. Right. So they don't have really the ability, because the money's not there yet, to make this a full-time job, to be able to have that commitment like we do in the States to get the development that they need. But with all that being said, the line play as far as the potential for these guys. I mean, they look like linemen that you'd see in the NFL. They move the same way. It's just, with football, it's a game of a million things that you're putting together to go out and play a game with. And it takes a long time to learn those skills. And they just haven't had that time. And so I think that's one of the cool things for me. I mean, selfishly, I love coaching a guy and seeing him improve a ton, because the potential is here, especially along the lines, because they got big, strong, tough people in Germany. And the skill play is not the best. So for our team, you're allowed 4 Americans for every team. So our American imports are quarterback, 2 defensive backs, and receiver. And that's kind of the same across the board, because you can't get those dudes in Europe.
Joe, I'm wondering, do you have a funny story where you were trying to teach a guy something that for us is just absolutely remedial, but it was completely a new and foreign concept to him? Any funny stories like that as you're basically teaching these guys how to play a sport?
Yeah, it's funny because actually my right tackle, his name's Roman Vorheit, and he played at in the CFL for a little while, and then he played at a smaller school in Baltimore. And so he also speaks great English, and so he's like my translator a lot of times because it's funny, you're talking about the minutia of offensive line plays. You're talking about, I need your ankle to bend at 30 degrees here, and you want to feel through the inside of the plantar part of your foot. And, they speak English, but sometimes you get this glossy look in their eyes. And I can start to read my guys when I know, like, hey, what I just told them makes no sense. So I always usually turn to Roman and I tell him, hey, Roman, tell him in Deutsch. He has no idea what I'm talking about. So thankfully I've got like a little built-in translator there, especially when we go out to Frühschoppen, which is the traditional Sunday. This is why Germans drink more beer, because Sunday morning they do Frühschoppen, which means it's like breakfast drinking. So Sunday morning you eat Weisswurst with sweet mustard and you drink Hefeweizen beer before noon. And then as soon as it's noon, you start drinking Helles. And it's called Frühschoppen, and it's like the big thing to do over here. And so they always help translate when I get there, because I'm very excited to drink my beer on Sunday morning, because it's not something I usually get to do. And sometimes there's a language barrier with the ordering. And when I say, I would like all of the things on the menu. No, I don't want this and that. I want everything.
Yeah, that's so crazy. They'd be drinking beer like that. I would be 5,000 pounds, bro. All the carbs. That's drinking like a loaf of bread. Like, it's crazy. The draft is coming up, right? And I always hear this when people say, hey, go get somebody and draft up front in the trenches, Joe. You got to draft up front. And I'll be looking around like, you do know there could be bust at defense and offensive tackle, right? You do know that these guys can bust too. And when they bust, sometimes on the offensive line, it's like ridiculous. They're like not good at all. Can you tell when a guy is getting drafted or they draft offensive lineman and you watch his film and you're like, oh, that guy's not going to be good? Do you kind of know, like based on what you saw, like, yeah, that's not going to work in the league?
Yeah, I should have been a GM if I could tell that from watching the film. But I think it's like sometimes I watch a guy and I'm like, I just don't know if his game relates to the NFL, because I just don't know if he can bend, or maybe the things that he's doing to win at the college level is he's just winning with strength, or he's just overpowering them, where that's not going to work because everybody's big and strong in the NFL. So sometimes I feel like I can see that, even more than offensive line, though. I feel like I can see it with pass rushers. Watching guys who maybe have a lot of sacks or who are super fast and get drafted pretty high at pass rusher, but then I watch them and I'm like, they're very tight in the hips. They can't turn their core. They can't twist to be able to get into new moves. And I just don't see any pass rush moves that can win, because you can't just run around guys in the NFL anymore. Like, yeah, you could run around guys and run over them in college, but what are you going to do to win at the NFL level? And so I'm skeptical sometimes, and I feel like my hit rate, at least in my head, as a pass rusher, whether they're going to be a flop or not, is a little bit higher than the offensive line, because the offensive line is tough. I mean, I like drafting a bunch of guys in the middle rounds at the offensive line and developing them, because it is a position that takes a long time to develop. And usually, especially if you have a great offensive line coach, unfortunately, we had a couple great offensive line coaches that aren't here anymore that were here with Callahan. And I hope Andy Dickerson's a great offensive line coach. I was here with him in Cleveland, and he's done well elsewhere, and remains to be seen how he's going to do in Cleveland. But if you have a good offensive line coach and they have a chance to spend 3-4 years with a guy that's got some potential as a mid-round draft choice, we've seen a lot of guys that they can be developed into good starting offensive linemen, because it's about putting together a million different techniques and skill sets to become an offensive lineman. But it does take that time. So I think you're going to get more bang for your buck early if you draft a receiver or a skill player. And that's why I like kind of taking those guys a little bit higher sometimes, and take your offensive lineman, your defensive lineman, especially your interior guys in the middle rounds.
Speaking of a crowded room, you got Jack Conklin, Dawand Jones, and Jedrick Wills. That's 3 for 2 positions. How do you go about figuring that out, Joe, like this year? I mean, this is tough.
Yeah, it's tough. I think, unfortunately, the nature of the game is there's a lot of injuries, and so sometimes those things sort themselves out. But you got a talented guy like Dawand, who, I mean, he was a great player at Ohio State. He, was high on everybody's board when they drafted him, but I don't think anybody thought they were going to get the player that they got. So, I mean, honestly, I'd put him in there as the starter until Jack can prove that he's back and he's healthy and that he can replace him. And then if you're having that type of a luxury, then you figure out, all right, who's playing our best football, and do we want to move one of those guys potentially somewhere else, or maybe do we want to rotate? And I think if you have that luxury, it's a great luxury, because there's a lot of teams in the NFL that don't have a single offensive tackle, and we have 3. So we should feel pretty lucky about that.
Joe, you referenced Bill Callahan being gone, going with his son. Obviously, it seems from our perspective to be a pretty big loss, no matter who you replace him with. I mean, the guy's probably the best offensive line coach in the league. How devastating is that for the Browns? Because he's done a great job of developing linemen.
That's really tough. Like I mentioned, it's something that I think you notice over time, right? Like we noticed guys that maybe weren't on our radar turning into be good starters. And that's what you get when you have a good offensive line coach, because they're working with them every day. They got them for 6-8 hours a day in the classroom, on the field, and they get just a little bit better every single day. And pretty soon you've got a really good line. And even if somebody goes down, those backups, they're ready to step up. And so I think you won't notice it in the first year. And hopefully we never notice it, because hopefully Andrew Dickerson does a great job and picks up right where Bill left off. But over time is really when you notice how good an offensive line coach was, when you lose guys and they're able to step up. The backups are playing just as well as the starters, and you have a line that's decimated, but they're still playing really good football.
Joe, I know you have to go to get ready for practice, but I wanted to ask you before we left, how does it feel to be a Raven?
It feels uncomfortable. I feel like I have to take a shower every day after I take my Ravens gear off.
Flacco became a Brown. Joe Thomas became a Raven.
Yeah, didn't have that on my
crazy
bingo
world.
card.
Thanks, Joe.
Joe,
Strange times we're
always a
living.
friend
Thanks
of the
for having
show.
me on, guys.
Thanks for being a big part of
Appreciate
it.
you.
We appreciate it, and good luck to your team. We'll be following them.
Yeah. And congratulations to you guys. Hell of an accomplishment. I mean, what you guys are doing right now is incredible. You guys have made your show one of the most popular shows around. I know it's must-see TV all throughout the Midwest and for all Browns fans. So congratulations. Keep kicking ass.